Welcome back to another episode of the Briefcase in the Barn, a series of the Furious the Curious show with me and Gary, where we talk about life, Christianity, business, money, and more. Thanks for being here. Show sponsor is T&T Hay Sales. If you want hay, call Gary.
If your animals won't eat it, we will. That used to be the slogan I put on T-shirts when I first started.
Really?
One time I sold a load of hay to a lady on Vancouver Island. Like this is back in 2010 or something. I was newly married, and Marie gets the mail one day from the mailbox, and it's this nice Christmas card. And some old sassy 65-year-old crazy horse lady sends me a nice Christmas card. Yeah, I wish you and your family the best. Here's some of the nasty hay you sold me. You said if my animals wouldn't eat it, you will, so I hope you enjoy your snack. Anyways, I chewed on it, sent her a picture, and said, you're welcome.
It reminds me of that other picture you sent me on that screenshot from Reddit. Hey, you had done something.
Oh, yeah.
That's overtime?
Yeah, this is a funny story.
That's overtime story.
No, I can share it right now.
Okay,
it's
sure.
Totally fine. My wife hates the story. She quit listening to the podcast, so she won't hear it. One time so I used to, and younger people don't know this, but before Facebook Marketplace and Instagram, there was Craigslist. And Craigslist was how my business started. Like T&T Hay Sales, actually, ironically, we're talking about it. It started through Craigslist. And I used to post all hay on Craigslist, sell like crazy. A little bit on Kijiji, but mostly on Craigslist in BC. And I think Facebook Marketplace killed Craigslist. There's probably like a certain segment of the population that uses it, but it'd be very few. And I always post hay ads. Well, one Christmas, like probably 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we're having Christmas dinner at Marie's family. And we all were just thinking, I think I just run for city council. Yeah, that's right. In 2008, I ran for city council in my early 20s. And we thought, oh, what would happen if you Google your name? So we were all Googling our name. And I Google my name, and the very first thing at the top of the list is fark.com. And I'm like, what is fark.com? So I click on this link, and it's pretty disturbing. It takes me to this this Craigslist ad that I had posted. Well, one time, and just one time, I was being a total smart ass, and I was running a Craigslist ad that I posted, and I took a picture of the hay and the horse eating the hay, and it had like a hay net on, and then I had just done a workout, and just to be a turkey, I had just done a workout, I was sweating like a dog, and I had like crazy eyes, and I posted the picture of myself. So normally I posted the hay on like farm and garden section on Craigslist. For those of you that have used Craigslist, most people don't even know what I'm talking about. Well, there's other sections that are inappropriate. And one of them was casual encounters. Well, I posted it on the casual encounters section.
Just for fun?
Yeah. And this is like 3 years after the ad that I clicked on fark.com. And all of a sudden, I had a flood of memories coming back. Briefly, while Marie and I were dating, I was getting all these weird texts like from nasty ladies, like sending me just totally inappropriate, sending me weird stuff. Well, I'd posted it with my phone number in the ad, trying to sell them the hay on the casual encounters section, right? Well, people had taken this ad and turned it into a meme, like all kinds of memes. And I mean, I could share them in the thing.
Well, we'll share the meme. We'll share our picture.
We'll share one of them, maybe. Yeah. We'd be very selective. I get to decide which one. Some of them are not okay. But it's like, oh, yeah, no wonder the horse is blindfolded. Look at that crazy guy and all this funny stuff, and lock up your horses and all this weird stuff, right? Anyways. And then another page, so it was on fark.com and CraigslistWTF.com, which is pretty interesting. Anyways, they're basically, everything's redacted now. It's been 10 years, but that was that like
seeing that on your on the top of the list?
My mother-in-law was mortified. My wife was more. Everybody's just feeling sorry for me, right? It's a tool. So
that's awesome. What I see that you had a province of BC flag on your truck. What's that all about?
It's just part of the Conservative Party movement, right?
Oh.
I'm a flag. I put the big Conservative Party flag on Marie's Nissan NV on her 12-passenger van. Makes sense, right? Homeschool mom.
I love it. Okay. Fruit of the Spirit.
Oh, wow.
Last one of the series, self-control. Fruit of the Spirit being the fruits of being a Christian. And the last one on the list is self-control.
Self-control.
I think like taking responsibility for your own actions and emotions. Like not blaming other people, and when you want to have a reaction to something, when you feel the emotions coming up, staying in control and controlling those.
Yeah, the two places that you need self-control the most, I find, are in marriage and parenting.
Oh yeah,
hardest as well.
Yeah,
nobody will bring out your raw emotion like your spouse or your children, or at least in my case anyways. My wrath gets kindled pretty quickly. So I always tell people, I met with a guy the other day who's struggling in his marriage, and I always just say, learn to bite your tongue. Physically, literally bite your tongue as a husband, and you will have a better marriage. Like, there's obviously a time to communicate, and some people, a lot of men probably need to be more vulnerable and more expressing how they actually feel, but it needs to be done in like a marriage meeting setting, which is why I'm a big fan of the marriage meeting, because if you do it when you want to say it, it's typically not going to go well.
Yes.
Right? And so the wisdom of waiting until a calmer moment and setting the tone, saying to your wife or husband, it's like, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about. It's a bit contentious. I want to say it. I want to have the conversation in a moment where you're in the headspace to hear it. When would that be? And let them decide. And then they can mentally prepare and don't start. Yeah. When you say it in the moment.
It can still work though. I mean, sometimes in the moment.
Oh, sometimes it just has to. I'm not going to disagree with you, but our in the moment discussions are never great discussions.
Yeah.
We never solve problems in those moments. We both share how we feel, and we might feel better personally, but I don't feel like I've helped my wife become more sanctified by sharing
I will say that
my
like
concerns in the moment.
Focus on the Family. Me and Nicole went to a Focus on the Family marriage retreat like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And they taught basically like communication and just like listening techniques and stuff. And through coaching, you learn a lot of those as well. And I like just encapsulating what someone's saying before you respond, just like repeat back what they're saying and in your own words and say, is that actually what you meant? Is just wildly powerful and really slows the whole thing down.
I think I told you, Marie and I were at a family life marriage retreat.
Was one of the speakers Wayne?
No.
Like a South African guy?
No. So it's not your typically family life retreat. So it's not what everybody thinks. It's actually a fundraiser, and it's people are invited to it. Business owners predominantly.
All the rich guys.
Pardon?
All the rich guys.
Yeah, I'm the poorest one there, for sure. It's pretty some pretty interesting people there. But yeah, it's for people that make donations to family life. And on that note, if anybody's watching this and feels like they really need a marriage or need something for their marriage, I have free family life marriage conferences for them.
Okay. Sweet.
So they can reach out to you.
How do they reach out to you?
Well, to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Just send you or me, whatever. They can find me somewhere. If they look on fark.com, they can find my phone number.
How was the marriage retreat? You didn't take your phone with you, right? 2 days?
I did not take, first time ever, left my phone at home, which I don't need a pat on the back for it. It was whatever. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it was.
I was proud of you.
Yeah. I was proud of myself too.
You don't need a pat on the back though.
Not, like I always tell my wife, don't knock yourself over patting yourself on the back. It's the only affirmation you're going to get.
But you said it felt good.
Felt really good. It was very freeing. Very freeing. You've told me that even when you've done the long stretches in the lockbox, right? And once you know it's in there, it is actually freeing. We are prisoners to our devices, and ties in a lot to the book that I read while I was gone. Marie and I read the book by John Mark Comer. Many of you have read it, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Highly recommend.
We're gonna do a giveaway, right? Later?
Yeah, later in the overtime, we're going to do a giveaway. But very much, how was the marriage? It was good. It was a lot of relaxation. So a typical family life marriage conference has quite a few sessions. It's pretty intense. They're not only geared towards, they're geared towards everybody just wanting to improve their marriage, but they're definitely geared towards people that are struggling and just really want to get a lot of info in. So they have a date night planned. Whereas our retreat this weekend, there was quite a bit of free time. It was really nice for Marie. Like, didn't start too early.
You guys just hung out, or you hung out with other people, or
hung out with other people, had meals with other people. They specifically set you at different tables so you interact with different people throughout the weekend. And this is our 4th year in a row going, so we're getting to know almost everybody there.
Nice, and
it's really special. We really look forward to it. And
so, like, what'd you learn though? Like,
what did we learn?
What did you take away? Did you get anything?
The topic of the weekend was flourishing. Have a flourishing marriage. There was a session on conflict, what healthy conflict looks like, how important it is. And one of the lines that they used, which was, I think, Gary Thomas or Thompson, anyways, but Ken Dick quotes it as well in Freedom Session, is that conflict is the pathway to intimacy. And if you're a conflict avoider, like I am, you just avoid conflict at all costs. You think you're a peacemaker because you're avoiding conflict when really you just have shallower relationships. And so the challenge is really to engage in conflict in a healthy way in all relationships, in work relationships.
Which is like a biggest part of that, I think, is being okay with not being liked or accepted. Because if you really desperately need to be liked and accepted, you're going to really not want to do conflict.
Yeah, but the trade-off on the other side of the coin is just the beauty of having a deeper, closer relationship with someone when you had the conflict. So you don't need too many times. Like, first of all, most times it is going to go well. People are surprised how often it goes well. If you do it, like I said, where you plan it well and you know, so I hear what you're saying. And so you're right. Like, there's definitely a lot of my life was just avoiding things. And then you have, what happens is if you're like that, you start to have a point in your life, and this is why I love Freedom Session, because it nails you on stuff like that. But it's like people, eventually, even Christians, have a swath of people that they just don't like, don't talk to, avoid, sometimes even family members, but really for sure, just people in business and stuff, right? It's like, oh, I just can't talk to that guy, avoid that person. It's like, as a Christian, like, that's not how we should be able to basically talk to anyone. Obviously not close. Maybe there's people that have hurt us and we're not going to trust them the same. But yeah, so I feel like that's kind of what I got out of that weekend. There was another part that was really important too.
Because that was more like the subjects that you learned about. Like what did you actually learn? Were you enlightened on something? They were like, oh crap, I got to change something, or
our marriage,
or just maybe not.
Yeah. I think it ties into the book. So it was very interesting because we just didn't know what the marriage. The conference is going to be about. We just kind of go in blind every time. But Marie and I decided to listen to an audio book on the way up, and we finished listening to it on the way down this book. And it was so tied in. And it was interesting because I also left my phone at home. So it was just this whole thing of like Sabbath, taking breaks. In the book, he talks a lot about how, Jesus, just his pace of life, how it was, how he often took time to go by himself. Like, we basically equate in Dutch culture for sure, but just in general in our society, busyness is equated with efficiency, productivity. Good. It's good. It's your praises are sung. You're put on this pedestal if you're drowning, and it's total BS. And that's kind of been my mantra in my life too. And he really eviscerates people like me in the book, where I would say, well, it's my personality. That's how I thrive. And is there truth to that? Yes, but like
it's more based out of like just being messed up or trauma, and just like being wildly driven. It's not like a super healthy sign.
Where you're basically.
What I thought was interesting when I listened to podcasts from that guy was that he said God is never hurried in anything he does. God is actually the opposite of that. He's patient, and he's like
slow to anger.
Intentional. And he goes like, so it's actually not a good thing, like to be hurried all the time and going and taking the time. And it's interesting as well. I'm sure he talks about it in the book. But when Jesus got interrupted, when he was on earth and walking around, he got interrupted all the time. And he always took the time to talk to the person when he got interrupted, even though there was like some emergency going on.
Yeah, he did share that. He shared about where people died, and I think it was Lazarus and a few others. And then also he talked about, I could be misquoting now, but he talked about the when Jesus went into the desert for 40 days, right? And he basically was going there to pray, and that led up to him being tempted and to extreme hardship, right? And it was kind of like that idea, even for us as people, if we're going to, mimic the Savior, it's like, okay, how are we taking time to charge? How are we spending time in prayer? Are we fasting? Are we doing these things, right? And I think, it's got to be a heart thing. So obviously, I'm always scared to, whenever even for myself, I'm like, okay, I don't want to become a box checker. I quickly do that where I'm like, oh, now I've done the thing. It's not about that.
Now I'm not hurried anymore.
Yeah. But,
okay.
Anyways, that was my weekend. What did you do this weekend?
What did I do this weekend? I don't know. I went golfing. I had a fun golf game on Friday with a bunch of buddies. Saturday, had church men's breakfast.
Okay, how was that?
That was pretty good.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, I hung out with the family. Friday, Saturday. Saturday, Sunday, I was hanging out with the family. Just pretty chill. So actually, one more thing on the busy thing. I think it's also a control thing, right? Like if we want to have control of our lives and our businesses and everything else like that, then we're going to be super busy and hurried. But if we trust God, then and let Him have control and don't feel like we need to control everything, it's going to be a lot easier not to be super hurried and pushed around. And anyways, proverb of the week. It's a little bit of a longer one, but I thought it was good because you being a former alcoholic, this ties into that.
Still an alcoholic.
Still an alcoholic? You still consider yourself an alcoholic?
Yeah, I still consider myself an alcoholic.
Do you still go to AA meetings?
I could.
You did last year for a while, right?
Yeah, I went with a buddy who was newly sober.
Okay, here we go. Proverbs 23, 29 to 35. You guys will survive this little bit of a longer piece. So, who has anguish? Who has sorrow? Who is always fighting? Who is always complaining? Who has unnecessary bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? It is the one who spends long hours in the taverns trying out new drinks. Don't gaze at the wine, seeing how red it is, how it sparkles in the cup, how smoothly it goes down. For in the end it bites like a poisonous snake. It stings like a viper. You will see hallucinations, and you will see crazy things. You will stagger like a sailor tossed at sea, clinging to a swaying mast, and you will say, they hit me, but I didn't feel it. I didn't even know when they beat me up. When will I wake up so I can look for another drink? So those people have what the start of the proverb is: anguish, sorrow, always fighting, always complaining, unnecessary bruises. Remember that time? Unnecessary bruises, bloodshot eyes?
Yeah. That's how I came into AA. Face black and blue, literally. No idea how.
Really?
Yeah. Horrible shape.
So what's your opinion on alcohol now? Do you think people should cut it out completely?
No, I don't think that's not biblical either. I think that there's two ends of the spectrum. There's the end of the spectrum where people justify drunkenness in Christian communities, for sure. In the Dutch culture, it's like the acceptable sin. When people get drunk, it's joked about. I don't understand that. It's literally in the list of, if you look at Paul's teaching. So I really don't understand that. And then there's the other end where I grew up, where, my mom would say, well, alcohol caused so much problems. How could you ever justify doing something like that? Well, it's not that black and white, right? So, well, it's obviously many times in scripture, even there's verses that you could use to justify drinking. So, I guess I feel like, in our culture, like in our church community, there's definitely a sense of like anti-drinking, really, right? Which, again, I don't totally understand. But alcohol quickly becomes a problem. So people that don't drink, that's just wisdom, right? Yeah. And I think that's where I love it. And even for myself, and I still controlled by a lot of things, but I've always wanted to become a person who is controlled by nothing, right? Like, what wasn't in the grips of, like, even that's why the phone thing's so important. I don't want to be in the grips of my device and having to check my device, right? And I am. So it's like, it's the same with alcohol. I struggle a little bit. I guess the Proverb is talking specifically about drinking in there, but that will be anything that the specific to alcohol, right? But there's definitely many, many things drugs that people are controlled by. So
yeah, it was kind of interesting in Freedom Sessions week 1 video last week. What's his name? Ken was going through all the different drugs of choice, and
I love it how he can just hammer them out.
Yeah, he had a big list.
Yeah,
I wish I had that list here, but okay. Yeah, Proverb of the week. That's that. Random question that I came across. How old are you now? 40?
Yeah.
If you knew you were only going to live to 50, would you live any differently?
Yes, I would.
How?
I'm doing better with it, but I would definitely spend more time with my family, my kids, wife, and kids. Yeah.
Which is interesting, actually, because we spend, 90% of our time with our kids before the age of 18? Or something like that. Like the stats are just
90% of the time that we're going to spend with them is spent before 18. After that, there's only 10%. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably a bit there again. That's a stat, and stats are specific to whatever. I mean, in my case, if my kids farm with me in the future, it'll be way more later. If we're working every day on the farm together, like it's
generally speaking,
though, that's fair. Especially because some children end up moving away and you basically hardly ever see them. I look at my siblings. I mean, my parents see some of my siblings for 1 week out of the whole year, right? And part of the day.
So do you assume then that you're not, because you assume that you're not going to die when you're 50, that you're going to...
No, I think I'm going to die young. So that's why I'm always in such a mental conundrum. I always thought I'd die by 30. Back when I came into AA, I thought, man, if I see 30, that'd be a lot of runway I got left here. That'd be surprising.
Okay.
Oh, I was living a hard life.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I went through a season where I drank 6 cans of Coke and smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and that's pretty much all I consumed.
I'm starting to feel good about myself here. Okay, we're going to react to a little clip here from John Piper on that you posted on your story
Instagram
yesterday.
story, yeah. I watched it and I'm like, wow, I love this.
Yeah, one sec.
Your disposition walking down the street is give, not, I won't be taken in by that rascal beggar on the corner. He's a liar. He always tells lies. That's not your mindset. I had that mindset for a long time. I walk by these people every day. I walk by. I don't drive by. I walk by. I know their names, 6 of them. What's your attitude towards these folks? Yeah, half of them going to rip you off. They're going to lie through their teeth about what that money's for. What's your heart? What's your disposition? I'll give you a little test here, a little warning. When you get to heaven, you will not hear out of the mouth of King Jesus, wow, you were so shrewd not to be taken advantage of. I promise you that will not be one of your rewards. And if you were taken advantage of 50% of the time, and the other 50%, it met some need and glorified Jesus, and you don't know which is which, he does, and he doesn't really care whether you got ripped off. You got plenty. You got plenty. That's what I finally decided. So I go to the bank, I get 51s, put them in a drawer, carry 6 a day, and I give them away. And I give enough of them away that I can look into their eyes and say, look, if I just give you these 3 to 5 $1 bills, could I have 3 minutes of your time? They always give me 3 minutes, man. Just tell me your story. That's all I want to know. I want to know your story. I want you to be honest with me now. This is yours. Keep it whether you tell me or not, but you take it from there. Test your heart, Christian.
Test your heart.
Yeah.
So what did you think when you watched that?
Well, I had a bunch of thoughts. I mean, one is I used to be the guy on the street, right? So when I came to AA, I basically had nothing. Like, I quit drinking in 6 months after I started, but I had $40,000 saved up when I graduated from high school. And I remember 7 months later, that was in June. I remember in November being newly sober, just came from an AA meeting, and we used to have those TD bank books. You know, I banked at TD my whole life, and I had the passbook. And I opened it up, and there was like $300 or $600 in there, right? And I'm just like, man, how did I go from having? And I just flipped back through, and it was just all the things that you can imagine that you would just piss money away on at bars and nightclubs and all these places.
Yeah.
So I guess my first thought is, hey, I've been there, and I've slept on park benches, and I've slept in drunk tanks, and so I know what it's like to be just completely hopeless on my own strength. I've been there, and where people totally wrote me off and had no faith in me, and a few people did. And through that, I ended up getting sober, and by the grace of God, kind of got help. But
was that faith in you, or just them choosing to love you?
Oh, just doing the right thing. So it's similar, like the part that struck me the most, and this applies to all charity and generosity on our part, is that we are responsible to be generous and give lavishly to whatever. I mean, we're still called to be wise, and we're
not just with money, but with
everything.
Yeah.
But in particular, finances. People cling to money the tightest, and time, but money really, because that's an idol to us, right? It's for sure an idol to me. But God, the charity or the person is responsible for once we've given it to them. It's not our concern. Like if God puts it on our heart to give money to a homeless person, or to even at church, or we could always split hairs. You could take any, like, what are we going to do? Start going through every nonprofit and see, how good they are with their money. Like, no, it's on them. Like, they're going to have to account for that, right? Yeah. And I mean, we're going to have to account for how generous we are. And the best part of it is check your heart, because it's always a heart issue, right? And like, basically, what you can look at someone's bank book again and see where their heart's at. When you looked at my bank book from that 6 month period when I was drinking, you could see where my heart was at. It was in a horrible place. Yeah. Right. And so
your calendar and your bank,
and your bank account are going to tell you where your heart's at,
where your affections are.
So yeah, I love it. I think that, I mean, in his case, he's taking the time to, I gotta be careful what I say now, because now I'm having the video of Francis Chan that you sent me last night in my head, which you should also post a link to that, because that's worth a watch for people, especially for younger people. I think like older people don't struggle with it as much because they grew up in a culture where they didn't have to live their whole life in public display, and they probably just did things the right way. But we live in such a weird culture now. So yeah, Kyle sent me a video last night of Francis Chan. I'm rabbit trailing now, but it's so connected.
Yeah, a sermon.
What
was it titled? It was Living a Quiet Life.
Living a Quiet Life. It was basically to all young people, like people in their early 20s. And it was essentially calling us to say, hey, instead of posting your good things you're doing, like your Bible reading time, why don't you post your sins? Like how about we just learn to be people that just do the right thing quietly, which is a great calling. It made us question whether we should be still doing this podcast. So we might shut it down, actually. 6 listeners will be really disappointed. But anyways, think about it.
Yeah.
It's food for thought, eh?
It is food for thought. What I found interesting was that he goes, God's not going to ask you like when you get to heaven, like, or congratulate you on how shrewd you were as a business person.
Yeah, that was convicting.
You know, like how good of a business person you are, and that makes me think of you know, I go see Grace's grave once in a while.
Yeah,
and I go. I think about my own grave then, and my boys coming to see it. Hopefully, hopefully they'll have liked me enough that they'll come pay a visit or something. But I don't want them to say like, Dad was a really good coach, or like he did a really good cool podcast, or
they're just not going to say that.
No, but I don't want them to either. But sometimes we can you know, the things that we pursue, like having a nice house or vehicles or things like that. Like that, I don't want to be remembered for those things. I want to be remembered for Dad loved Jesus, Dad loved people, and Dad loved us. Like if I wanted to say something, and I think we can. You know, we often just get our priorities wrong. You know, and what we think is important. A lot of those things just aren't important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's taking the time to engage with them, right? And so, like, I look at our culture, it's like, how many of us Christians, and lots do, but lots don't. Like, how many people are hanging out at Ruth and Naomi's or hanging out downtown? And you don't need to go to Ruth and Naomi's. You literally just stand on downtown and talk to people. Like, it's, and they're hurting and they're lonely and they're, like his idea of like, hey, tell me your story. Or
that's what I liked about too, because it's a coaching principle basically, but also I think a Christian principle of like before you go and like tell the person what they're doing wrong or what you think they can fix or like get up. It's just like get to know them, like hear their story, listen to them, like care about them. Not, you know, and I that's just so important with any person you interact and meet with is like before you say much, like listen. I think that's just super crucial to build trust and to actually show care. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah.
You do it?
I don't do a lot of preaching, but I mean, I've shared it before on here, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, a lot of people that are very gifted communicators and believe things very strongly suck at showing how much they care about people, or maybe they just don't care.
Or maybe they just don't care. Yeah.
That's the harder word.
Okay. I think that's it. We're going to give that book away, answer a few more questions in overtime. Got one question that came in over the week that says, how do you keep the Sabbath day holy and do you work on Sunday? And so we'll answer that in overtime.
Okay.
And I'll see you guys next time. Also, $5 Patreon. If we can get all the
question ties into the book so well too.
Which question?
The Sabbath, about keeping the Sabbath holy. It's like literally he has a whole chapter on about Sabbath.
Big theme today in the podcast.
Big theme is Sabbath. What does your Sabbath look like? There again, it's not box checking, right? So many people like, rules, regulations. Like if that's your guiding thing, I mean, you're a Pharisee. So it's like,
go read Galatians. Have you been reading it?
Yeah.
It's just like not about what you're doing.
No.
Do you have faith in Jesus? But that's it. See you guys on the next one.
If there is a next one.
There'll be a next one, I think. Thanks again for listening to another episode of The Briefcase in the Barn. As always, really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it with social media, any of that stuff. It helps a lot. Going on the podcast app and rating it. If you take a minute or two to do that, it's very much appreciated. And also, if you like the content and you're benefiting from it and wouldn't mind supporting the show, it would go a long way if you could do that. So $5, doesn't seem like it maybe a lot, but if enough people do it, it can make a big difference. So if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Furiously Curious. I'll put a link in the description as well, or you can find that link in any of my social media bios. And as you know, if you're listening to the show, you also get access to overtime episodes that way. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.